36 kilo.
35,2.
31,8. Zie je aan, mannen. 26 kilo, VK-schub. Dat is niet normaal. Oh, dat is sessie. En mij. Goedendag. Halleluja.
So welcome back to another podcast. This time it will be in English. Forgive us for those English listeners or viewers. We're Belgians. It's not our native language, but we'll give it
we'll manage
our best shot.
I guess so, yeah.
You won't believe exactly where this is being recorded and with who we are recording this. I think I have to introduce no one less than Mr. Shaun Jarvis, part of the Rod Hutchinson team in the past, who's over there, who's across the swim. But Shaun, maybe you should say where we are.
Yeah, so we're in the amazing venue called Redmire Pool, and what an iconic place to have this podcast. Yeah, unbelievable location.
Yeah, that's
beautiful weather, good company.
Beautiful weather, exactly.
Really good weather. Yeah, you couldn't have asked it to be better. Maybe a bit cooler, but
maybe a bit. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's July.
But what an iconic place, you know. Yeah. Just across from us is the boathouse and the dam wall behind us here. It's just amazing.
Yeah. We're here in the best possible conditions. It's Redmire in all its glory.
Absolutely,
that's very
it
true.
really is.
Yeah.
All right. So, so could you tell us how you managed to get in here to come fishing for the week
into Redmire?
Yeah.
So historically, what happens is it's done through a booking system where there's one day a year. It's towards the end of January where everybody dulls in. You call Les Bamford, who runs the lake for the estate.
He's the one from the Bamford Conversions?
That's the one, Les Bamford from Bamford Conversions, exactly that same gentleman. And so you've got a window of 24 hours where you can, well, it's about 12 hours actually, I think, daylight hours anyway, where you can phone Les, and if you're lucky enough, you get through, and he's got a calendar, and he'll just find you a slot if you're lucky enough to get what you want. If not, you just try and fill a gap wherever. Mm-hmm. So I was very lucky. I called sort of earlier this year and managed to get the slot in July, and so here we are.
I heard.
And you're talking a lot of calls. You know, you're in the thousands of calls. A friend of mine has over I think he did about 3,500 phone calls in the past on his own.
On his own.
And he didn't get through that year. Yeah, so you know, it's crazy that your phone's lines go down into meltdown, complete meltdown.
So it's an absolute privilege to be
absolutely,
here.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. We did a walk around, and there's a stone plaque on the cabin which says talks about the 3 records.
I love that. I thought that was a great touch. That
33 and a quarter.
33, 34 and a quarter. Yeah, 44 and then 51 and an ounces. Yeah,
the 44, if I'm not mistaken, was Clarissa.
Clarissa, that's right.
Caught by Dick Walter.
That's correct. Literally opposite us. Literally opposite this swim. In the willow pitch. That's right.
Great. So if this is such historic value, when did you first hear about Redmire?
Oh, I've read about Redmire ever since I was a youngster. I remember we used to have an angling publication when I was a boy called Angler's Mail, and there was only 2 publications really. There was no magazines back then. There was no internet, so you had Angler's Mail and Angling Times, and the Mail was a smaller, kind of more colourful kind of paper. Whereas the Angling Times was a big paper type, like regular sort of newspaper type thing for the fishermen. And I remember the picture of Chris Yates with his big common, which just missed out on the record. Very spawn-bound fish, but that sticks in my mind, you know, from being a youngster. Right through to when he caught the Bishop at 51, you know, the record, and that picture of him there, like on the mat, you know, incredible. So that was kind of really when it when it come to light. But I was very fortunate where I lived. I sort of grew up with people like Chris Ball around me and so on, you know, and I knew Chris Ball when I was in my late teens and through my 20s when I was really got into carp fishing. And of course, Chris being a carp historian, you know, God rest his soul, but he was obviously very in tune with everything carp, and this place was like, you know, it's like the Mecca, wasn't it, you know? Yeah. So he would often talk about this place, and from that I kind of, you know, bought the books and things like that, you know, and just sentimental more than anything. Never thought I'd ever fish the place. Yeah. And here I am today, but it's my first ever time as well, you know. Yeah. And you know, you walk onto the place and, you know, it's beauty at this time of year as well. But every swim you walk in's got history, you know, you're following the footsteps of giants, you know, you really are. Yeah. These people, these giants of carp fishing that you've read about, and, you know, absolutely incredible. And here we are in the swims that they fish from, you know. Okay, maybe it's changed a bit, but it's still that atmosphere. Yeah, yeah, it's just...
it cannot leave. It's secluded.
You wouldn't know it's here, would you?
It's just amazing how they ever found it.
Amazing. Little pool like this, just...
51 pounder back in 1980 it was.
Yeah.
I guess that must have been...
Uncomprehendable. Yeah. Uncomprehendable, that kind of fish. And bigger, they thought, as well, back then.
There were a lot of rumours about even bigger.
Absolutely, yeah. The king, you know, that was that iconic shot of it under the punt, you know, and...
Who fished the lake? Who's been here?
Sorry?
Who has been fishing this lake during all those years?
Yeah, so you've got people like Len Arbery, very famous, Kevin Clifford, those sort of people who write quite extensively about it. You know, they're sort of two, well, certainly Len, I've become quite, you know, friendly with Len, and he told me lots of stories about the king and things like that, you know. But yeah, I mean, people like Rod Hutchinson, Chris Yates, I mean, just gods of carp fishing, you know, they've just been here and done it, and Richie McDonald, you know, and the list is endless, really, of the people. Kevin Maddox is another one, you know. I knew Kevin, I fished his waters before back in the day, and he talked very fondly about this place, and absolute, like...
I think there's one in that list that you got to know better. Wasn't that Rod Hutchinson?
Yes, Rod, yeah.
Yeah, how did you first meet Rod Hutchinson?
So obviously I having read about Redmire, I knew Rod Hutchinson, the name, but I first met Rod. It was about '89. It was at one of the carp shows in Dunstable. The Carp Society used to hold like an annual show, not usually a winter. It used to be the winter carp shows, and I remember going up there. A friend of mine, he drove. I was only young. I was in sort of like 20, but we drove up there, and I remember spotted Rod at the bar, funny enough, you know, but he was at the bar, and I think now, looking back, well, I do know now, looking back, that he was at the bar with somebody, and it actually was Albert Romp, you know, a very famous Savay angler, and anyway, I built the courage up, really. Albert left, and Rod was just sort of finishing up his drink, and I kind of went over to Rod and just sort of introduced myself, because just prior to that, I'd been using a crab flavour, and it was out of a Catchem bottle, so that's how I kind of knew about Rod and Catchem 88 and everything. But it had just crab written on the front. There was no monster crab at that time. This was just a crab flavour, and I told him I'd caught some fish, you know, used his flavour, and I was quite taken aback how interested he was, you know, and he took the time to listen to me and everything like that, you know. And he said to me, "Oh, you must send some photos through," and I only had like very poor photos at the time that used to get processed at the chemist, you know, used to go and take your film in, and they used to process it, and it was like a lottery whether or not they were any good or not. But anyway, I got a few, and I did post them off. I posted them off anyway, and thought nothing more about it. Anyway, and I also told Rod as well at the time that there was a little tackle shop near where I lived, and I told him that I knew that they stocked some of his flavours and bits and pieces at the time. And he knew of them, obviously. And anyway, so kind of cutting a very long story short, what happened was I was in the tackle shop one day, and they said to me, "Oh, we got something for you here, actually. And then he said, "Here's a telephone number. You know, Rod would be interested to chat to you." And I said, "Really?" So I made the call, and we chatted for a little while. And he said I was impressed with your photographs and things, and he just said, "How would you like to test some flavours and bits and pieces?" And of course, I couldn't believe it. You know, it's like hitting the lottery. You know, And that's where it all started, really. In my association, I used to phone him every week. We'd chat on the phone. I chat to Annie as well, you know, eventually. And yeah, and of course, then it went to like Rod Hutchinson fishing developments from Catcham, and that's when like really the ball started rolling, and my sort of relationship with Rod grew, and did writing for him and so on. So.
Oh, in what types of magazines did you?
So Rod used to have an annual carp scene. So it was basically a kind of a bait catalogue. It was a bait catalogue with some tackle as well. But obviously he had some guest writers as well. And I wrote 2 or 3 articles for him, talking about the flavours that he'd asked me to test and so on.
Do you still? You must have those magazines at home.
Yeah, still got them. Yeah. Of course.
All right, because I think Dieter here wants to introduce something.
Oh, we still have the original Carp Scene magazines where Shaun used to write for.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that was the first one I wrote in. So that was the first one I wrote in. So I must say that. So what used to happen is I was at the time I was a fitter at work, the company I worked for. So I'd come home from work and my wife would say, "There's been another delivery for you today." So and she said I had to get the chap to put it in the kitchen because it's so big. So I'd go through and there'd be a huge box, you know, enormous box, cardboard box, and I'd tear it open and there would literally be, I mean, this is the generosity of the man. There would literally be like piles of his base mixes in bags, then like litre bottles of various flavours, you know, that would last you a lifetime really, you know, but he'd send so many flavours, as I say, powdered mixes, powders and additives and all sorts of things, colourings and so on, enough to keep you going for a season, let alone just to try. And then like a week or 2 later, another box would arrive and, you know, you couldn't get through it quick enough, you know, but that was what he was like, you know, he didn't ask, apart from just an update on how you thought they worked, he didn't ask anything for it other than that, you know, it was really good. Yeah. So, as I say, he asked me if I would write a couple of articles and I did. I actually wrote 2, he asked me, and he put them both in here, as well as a few photographs of some of the, you know, the odd photograph here and there, as well as the articles. But you know, there was a few that stood out. You know, I had to write about them because they were just game changers in my opinion. And I mentioned the crab earlier on, and which is monster crab. And at the time I was using that prior to meeting Rod, I was living with my parents, and I remember my parents had a fish pond, and I would quite often shake the bottle, I'd take the cap off, and I'd drop a few drops onto the surface of the pond, and they literally were clooping off the top, you know, this stuff, as it went down through the column, and they were darting in and out of the water column, and it kind of, I thought, this is an incredible reaction, you know what I mean? So that eventually, obviously, monster crab was around, and that was, you know, so that was my go-to. Monster crab, shellfish sense pill, and at the time it was seafood blend as well, all right? And so that was to be, you know, because obviously I like, you know, you really need it, like something that you know works to test against. Yeah. So that was my kind of control. I would always use monster crab because I knew this lake. I was fishing this one particular water at the time, and I was kind of really getting in tune with it, and I knew where the fish would be, you know, at a certain time of the year, certain time of the day, whatever. And so this monster crab I knew worked very, very well, and it worked that well, Fred, that that I was having other members of the club at the time complaining that every time they caught fish, they were excreted it all on their mats, and it's obviously monster. Yeah. It stank, and they were saying your bait, you know, stinks, blah blah blah. But that's how good it was. You know, it was so digestible, and I was putting quite a bit in, hand rolling it all, putting quite a bit in. So I knew that was a good test. That was my control, let's say, you know. So everything I tested was against monster crab.
Is that the true testing of a bait? Because
I think you have to have a control, otherwise how do you gauge it?
Exactly.
You know, and because I found that on this particular water, savoury baits. Okay, so Rod sent me a number of savoury baits. He sent me oily chicken. He sent me Cajun crawfish, that kind of savoury, spicy edge. I really couldn't buy a bite. the fruity ones and the kind of the fish kind of based attractors, brilliant. The fruit ones especially I found phenomenal, really very, very good. And one or two just shone, you know, head and shoulders above anything I'd ever tried. And literally it was runs all day on those. One or two maybe on the monster crab, but runs all day on the other two. And they weren't fished far apart. You know, we weren't putting kilos. We used to talk pounds of bait back then. We'd roll a couple of pound of bait or whatever. But I would roll maybe 5-6 pound of bait and of all of it, and then, you know, distribute it around. But these would be going all the time on these fruity ones, you know.
Yeah. Is that one of the factors that made it so good, the Rod Hutchinson Flavours powders, because it was tested against something that was already running?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I don't know what some of the other testers did, but that as I say, I used a control. But I know from talking to or speaking to Rod, the feedback about some of these attractors that I was finding was sort of unanimous. It was consistent across all of the field testers. It wasn't a one-off on my water. These were really doing serious damage on some waters. You know, they were taking waters apart. Some tough waters as well. And as I say, there's one or two that I, you know, absolutely amazing attractors. You know, they really are. As I said, it was quite a lot that I couldn't buy a bite. You know, I really couldn't. I struggled a lot, believe it or not. I struggled on this particular water. Rod sent me some. So chocolate malt, everyone knows that was one of Rod's favourites as well as maple. But I remember chocolate malt was one of Rod's go-to flavours, and you know he writes about it quite extensively about how good it is. I really struggled with chocolate malt on the waters that I fished. I really did. I know other people really rave about it, but I struggled. And when Rod sent me some chocolate malt Sensapil and some of the powder stimulators, it didn't enhance that. I just still could. This would just outfish it all the time, you know. So I would always, and I think Rod then, in hindsight now, I realise it now, I think Rod then knew that from my feedback, and he would send me the more fruit-based, fishy type attractors, that kind of thing. And he would know that I would be able to, you know, sort of establish how good they were, you know. Because sending me savoury baits, I would not really be able to give it any proper feedback.
And it made the testing also more consistent.
Absolutely.
The more data you have, the better the test results.
Absolutely. And I tried, I'm not just, I tried, so Superfish was my base mix. That was, you know, it had gone from seafood blend to Superfish. I thought, I was one of the first to use Superfish. It was amazing. I mean, I thought seafood blend was good. And I think in Rod's size, I still think he thought that was his best ever base mix, you know. But seafood blend was something else. You'd be rolling it and you'd find bits of bone in it and things like that. There literally was like everything in it. But so I was sold on that. So I would use fruit flavours in the fish meal as well. I wouldn't just use a fish and I would try that, you know. So I'd have monster crab on the Superfish and something like Nu-Val Fizz, let's say, on the Superfish. Just constant. You know, it really was devastating.
So it was on the same base mix, but a different flavour.
Correct.
Outfished
the monster crab, which I knew was a great. Don't get me wrong, I caught on the monster crab. They loved it.
Right.
But it was noticeable. There was a handful that really were head and shoulders above. The reaction to that was head and shoulders above the monster crab.
Right. So in this specific carp scene,
yeah,
you've got an article about doing the biz
on the fizz.
On the fizz.
Also, yeah, Nu-Val Fizz.
So tell me about how all that came together.
So I received this box one day, and in it was this yellowy, orangey kind of litre bottle with Nu-Val Fizz written on it, in handwriting, Nu-Val Fizz, on the label. So I had a smell of it, and it literally nearly took my head off. It was very sort of volatile, very high vapoury kind of attractor. Whereas the others are normally quite like a subtle, almost creamy sweetness, you know, that kind of subtle sweetness. But this was like bang, you know, almost like an ethyl alcohol, you could describe it. Very, very, very strong. And so anyway, yeah, I did the usual thing. I tried it. I tried it in seafood blend. I tried it in yellow seed mix, which Rod did. I tried it in yellow seed mix with ProMix 50/50, which I often found rolled it quite a little bit easier and everything. That was a little trick I used to do. but it just didn't work. I just couldn't get it to really produce. The monster crab was just doing it all the time. So I told Rod, and he said he'd received similar feedback. People said that once they boiled the bait as well, the kind of that volatility had gone. You know, that kind of pungent smell that hit you when you smelt the bottle had kind of gone. Not that that's a bad thing, you know, but Rod took that away, and he sent me a couple more samples, and one of them was a little bit more orange in colour. It was just a little bit deeper. More of a, I don't know if it was a more glycerol bait. I don't know. I don't know what Rod did to it really in that respect. But it smelt kind of, the fruity tones in it were less volatile. It just smelt a more rounded smell, you know. It's just much more attractive to smell.
Deeper tone.
Deeper fruits, and it wasn't as like smelling, you know, like paint thinner. It wasn't like, you know, take your head off, that kind of reaction, which was the original was like. It was, wow, blimey, you know. That was just something else. As soon as that went out, it was just like that, you know, constant.
Right.
So I reported that back. And what happened from there, the reaction to Nu-Val Fizz was so amazingly, like, a different level. I decided to use that as my eventually, over a course of time, that was my control, because it was that good. It's, and you know,
basically you switched over from the crab as a control
to the
fizz.
Yes, absolutely. Because Rod was sending me more fruity sort of kind of flavours. So I thought, okay, well, I know this fruit one is just devastating. Nu-Val Fizz was just a different level. So I thought, right, I'm going to use that now and test all the other fruit flavours against it. And that's how things went from there on. So this is around about 91, 92. And everywhere I went, it wasn't just this water, I must stipulate that as well. Everywhere I went with the fizz, it caught so much. So I was compelled, I thought I have to write an article about this, because it was doing the business. So hence the doing the biz on the fizz. And, you know, I don't know, a bit tacky, the title, but it sums it up, it really did. And everyone you speak to tested the fizz later on. So I think, well, I know, speak to Rod, that I was the first person to get catch a fish, I think, on the fizz, albeit I did catch on the volatile original one, but it was like a game changer. It was like a switch was thrown when I got that last batch. And yeah, it was just, say the article tells it all. There was one particular session where I just literally just couldn't put a foot wrong. It was just unbelievable.
So you reckon the first fizz you got was the same or completely different to the second one?
100% different.
So it was nothing to do with each other?
No. Rod went away, and I wish I'd asked him more. But obviously I don't like asking somebody how they make a bait. You just don't do that, do you? But I wish I'd known what he'd done, because it was just it was like chalk and cheese, these two. If you had them together, you'd think that's different. You couldn't smell the fruits for the vapor of it, you know, it just knocked you out. But the other one was just a lovely rounded fruity note with that kind of fizz, almost sherbety kind of back note. And it was just, it was just phenomenal. Really was a phenomenal attractor.
And it upgraded the control.
Yes.
Because you took the control to another level.
Yes.
Absolutely.
On the same mix with a different flavour.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So after that, or at the same sort of time, came autumn harvest as well.
That was sometime later, yeah. But autumn harvest, and I found this out later on, autumn harvest was had been around before that. Okay, but Rod released autumn harvest. Answering your question, autumn harvest came around, again, usual thing, bucks came through, bottle of this stuff, deep red, kind of lovely colour, almost, you know, black, not quite as dark as blackcurrant, but getting there. And that was literally great from the off. There was no sending back, you know, the feedback was like there straight away. Rod thought it would be great in the winter. It derives from berries that you'd find in the autumn time, okay, sort of like towards the tail end of the summer. And the red berries, that kind of spectrum, you know, dark berry. And it had that kind of aroma about it, it's almost like on the mulberry kind of spectrum. And again, similar consistency to the fizz as well. It was that kind of, I don't want to say glycerol, because I don't think it was, but it had that kind of more not as thin, you know, it was kind of a thicker kind of consistency. So yeah, so I tested that against the Fizz, and through the winter, and I'd used the Fizz through the previous winter, and Autumn Harvest was, I would say, similar match. It was up there with the Fizz.
So at first you tested it separately or together?
Together, always together.
Okay,
always had a control. Whatever I did, I always had a control.
Yeah.
People used to say to me, why are you using 2 different baits? And I say, well, I have to use one-on-one rod all the time.
Yeah.
I use 3 rods, so I always had 2 on the new bait. So I would probably get more runs, but you could tell by the amount of runs on the 2 rods.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was up there. It was a match for the Fizz, 100%. It really was.
So combining the two and creating the sort of recipe that originated in Redmire, I believe
well,
it was.
that was unbeknown to me. I didn't know about the Redmires. Okay, so the likes of Gaz Fairham and people like that, those lads up there in the north, they were playing around with these 2 attractors. Obviously, they knew they were both good.
Yes.
So they come up with the concept of combining them. And so I didn't know this was going on. And yeah, they came across the Redmire specials, and they are just, yeah, that was combining 2 amazing attractors, which would give you a massive spectrum across the fruit kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say to you as well is, I mentioned earlier that Autumn Harvest had been around before that.
Yes.
So a long time, Rod told me this, so a long time prior to this, even, you know, the liquid attractor coming out, Rod was playing around with volatile esters, okay? So in other words, when fruit is at its ripest and is into almost the fermentation stage, and he did this with a lot of flavours as well. In fact, Scopex is on that kind of thing as well. But what he would do, he would use those, and what the original Autumn Harvest was actually a spray dried additive. Okay, so they took the volatile esters, Rod didn't, someone did it for him, and they would spray dry it onto a base mix. And what Rod did was, Autumn Harvest, and this is documented in some of his books actually, so I'm not speaking out of turn, but Autumn Harvest became the original mingle fruit base mix. Okay, so that was what mingle fruit was, the original mingle fruit. Now Rod was to later release mingle fruit during my time with him as another base mix, deep red base mix. Okay, spray dried fruit esters, all right, into a base. The way it rolled was typical of like a HNV type. It was very sticky, very tacky bait. So it was kind of on that kind of sort of that level, probably, you know. But that's where, so Autumn Harvest was around that. His concept of those fruit esters and that kind of, but he called it mingle fruit. So he obviously readdressed that later on and wants to, and he used that kind of concept to come up with Autumn Harvest as a liquid attractor, and it was devastating. I used mingle fruit probably for the last few years of my time, because I took a little bit of a break from carp fishing in the late 90s. Work and various other things came in, family. But prior to that, mingle fruit was my go-to base mix. It was absolutely, I was fishing Savay at the time. I was fishing a very difficult water in East Sussex, sorry, and I caught literally to order. Mingle fruit, when that came out, that came in another batch from Rod. And of course, you know, base mixes were, you know, it was mainly attractors I had. You know, he'd always send me yellow seed mix and superfish every sort of delivery. But this sort of came out of the blue, and I thought mingle fruit, and you know, but as soon as I mixed it with the eggs, and it was just like, if you can imagine, any of you that have smelt Autumn Harvest, if you can imagine that in a powder form, it was just like, it just filled the room with this smell as you mixed it. It was a deep red, sort of magenta almost colour, you know. Obviously the fruit, the spray dried fruits and things, you know, they used in the base mix. And as well as that, Rod also brought, I want to just sort of go away from mingle fruit a little bit, because there was another one at the time, just prior to mingle fruit actually, and I've mentioned this to you, Dieter, in the past, that this is one of my biggest regrets ever with fishing, is I didn't pursue this. Was Rod did the same thing, i.e. fruit esters, okay, or certainly spray drying these things into a base mix. spray dried powders, sorry, he's not spraying the base mixes, spray dried powders into a base mix. And he did that with one called Scopex Dry.
Yes.
Right. If I could get hold of that now, that was all I would use from now on. I took that to Withy Pool at the time. So I was on Kevin Maddox's syndicate around about 92, 93. And I went on there, and Rod said to me, give this a try. And he said to me, I think this would really, really, really go well with a kind of maple-based attractor. He said, I would really, really like you to try Bream attractor. Okay. Of course, I'm on the phone and I'm thinking, Bream attractor? Are you sure? You know what I mean? This is like really weird. And he said to me, don't put off. He said, if you want to call it anything, he said, we'll give it a code name. He said, let's call it Guinness. So that's where, I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, well, what's this Guinness attractor you used to use, you know? But it was actually Bream attractor. On the maple side of things as well, and we all know maple, how devastating maple is. It's an amazing attractor. It's, you know, high in fenugreek, which is an amazing carp catcher anyway. So when you first smell Bream attractor, you get the maple, and there's a few other bits, and I don't know, that's Rod's secret, and, you know, fair play to him. But that, with the Scopex Dry, was probably, you know...
the best thing you've ever used.
It was as good as the Fizz, but it just... difficult waters were... they loved it. I just went, I mean, the Withy Pool was no breeze. I wasn't out in Withy long, but, you know, every time I went there, because I had to travel, you know, it was about a 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive to get there. I would rock up and it would, that's my phone, sorry. I would rock up and I would catch these hard fish, you know? Yeah. It was like crazy. Yeah, should we pause? Yeah, so Scopex Dry, I took it to Withy Pool, and Withy Pool was hard. There was, you know, you would be used to hear of people like maybe getting 1 or 2 runs a season.
A season?
Yeah, a season, yeah. It was granite hard, this place. Really hard. Small pool, full of swan mussels, zebra mussels, that kind of thing. It was just, everything was against you. Snags along one bank. It was like really tough. There were snags in every corner. But the fish were really cute, really cute. And the first time I went there as a syndicate member, I took the Scopex Dry with the Bream attractor. First night I was in the hut the night before, and we were looking at the photographs on the wall, and I said, I'd love that fish. And it was the old mirror, which is in one of the magazines. I wrote about it there. I think it's in this one, actually. No, I think it's in this one. And yeah, there it is there. So it's that fish there. Let's see. I said, that's a fish I'd love to catch. 2 in the morning, it's in the net. You know, next trip up, you know, I was in Compost Corner, little corner swim. Opening night of the season, lost one in the night. Next morning, had the common. Then one of the other syndicate members had the 40, so I'm down in his swim, and then I hear my buzzer screaming out. So I've had 3 runs in a morning now on the Scopex Dry. It was just phenomenal. It really was. I took it to Save, okay, as a day angler. I caught the first time there, I caught a 30 out of the Cottage Bay from the rat hole swim. I had then another one the next day because I slept across in Harefield Car Park, came across again, had a 27. It was phenomenal. I took it to the East Sussex water, Vinatro. Turned up, it was a bank holiday weekend, packed out, turned around and went home. Came back there on the Tuesday after the long bank holiday weekend, caught the big one first within about 3 or 4 hours of being there. And one that hasn't been out for years. There was a guy who knew the lake very well, came around. He said, oh my God, it's golden scales. He said, that's only ever been out like twice. 38, 10, incredible, you know. And we're talking about early 90s here, 93.
All of this is on the Scopex Dry?
Scopex Dry.
Right, with the Bream attractor as well? With
the Bream attractor. And what I used to do as well, because back then, pop-ups were, you know, you had to do your own. So what I did, I used to grill my pop-ups. But what I used to do, obviously, when you grill a pop-up, it kind of fades and it's never as good. So what I used to do is a few drops of Bream attractor into a bag, shake them up. And I don't know, it's a bit weird, but I'd heard it somewhere that if you kept bait in a paper bag or whatever, I kept them in a cardboard box, stop them to keep them drying out from, you know, getting you know, condensation or something in the pot. Crazy at the time. But I had this little cardboard box about the size of a spool case, with all my little pop-ups in, all nice and brown, where they'd soaked in the Bream attractor, you know. Oh, it was a game changer. But obviously I had an obligation to Rod to test other stuff, you see. So, but when I think about the volatile esters and the fruit esters and so on, you know, that he used to spray dry, you know, these powders and so on, or spray dry them into a powder form and put them into the mixes. I think this is my biggest regret, that I didn't pursue that longer, because I remember Rod always telling me that we were in a conversation on the phone one day, and you know, we were just talking about bait and things, and he said to me these words. He said, "Shaun," he said, "it's all about the fermentation," because I was asking him about these spray dried, how great Scopex is. He said to me, "It's all about the fermentation," and I just said, "Oh, okay, you know, yeah, great," you know, didn't really kind of think about it. I'm a 23, 24-year-old, you know, and didn't really sort of engage until now. When I think back and I think about how successful Rod was with particles, you know, he was the particle king. He took this place apart on particles, hemp and things like that, you know. Both him and Chris, you know, Chris on things, but certainly Rod, he experimented a lot with different beans and pulses and so on here when he was on the syndicate. And when he mentioned the word fermentation, it all kind of made sense, you know, and we're talking about volatile esters now, you know, where fruit is ripening and getting to that fermentation stage, where the sugars start to release and everything starts to happen. And it kind of, now I think to myself, if only I thought logically back then, I would have pursued it more, because there's definitely something in it. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any baits out there like Scopex Dry. Superfruit was another one he did, a base mix which had spray dried fruit powders, and mingle fruit. And as I say, mingle fruit became eventually my favourite, one of my favourite things, because it was on that kind of spectrum of Scopex Dry. I kind of crazy in the hindsight, but I was obviously testing things for him, and I loved the mingle fruit, and it complemented a lot of the flavours like Autumn Harvest and Nu-Val Fizz, because it had that really kind of deep, dark, fruity aroma on its own. So yeah, a bit of a regret there. I think Scopex. Well, we all know how good Scopex is, don't we? All, you know, it was just an all-time classic, and to have that in a base mix form, you know.
Back then it wasn't really an all-time classic. It was getting there though, but
yeah,
right now I think we are in a generation where Scopex and crab and flavors like that are in such a, you know, the reality of it is just they are in a different level, and they created flavors as a whole.
Yeah,
I mean the flavor scene as a whole.
Absolutely.
Just everything still people go to is Scopex and crab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In different types of angling.
Yes.
Even outside carping, Scopex is used.
It's classic. It's just a go-to. There's something in it. There's something in it. And I wonder, you know, Rod told me it's all about the fermentation. So those stages that get that trigger in a carp's, you know, feed and response. You know, look at, we all use particle, don't we? And you know, there's something definitely in particle, isn't there? Hemp, and you know, they don't see hemp, do they, in their thing? And people say, oh, it's like snails and that. I don't buy that. I personally don't. There's something in the hemp that it's that fermentation of that seed that's drawing them in. I think, just my opinion, but I think it's definitely. And Rod said that it's all about that.
Fermentation.
All about it. They were the words he used. It's all about the fermentation, Shaun, he said. And the jigsaw sort of come together then, you know, with the afterwards, later down the line when I thought about it more, I thought, do you know what, I can see where it all ties in, the fruit esters and all those kind of, the fermentation of the fruits and things, you know. Because last time I saw Rod, I actually asked him, I said to him, we were in a pub just before Christmas, and it was, he passed away sadly a bit later the following year. But I asked him outright, I said to him about Scopex. I said, come on, Rob, what's this crap with Scopex then? You know, what's that? And he just said it's certain fruits that, you know, and he really wouldn't go in. But I knew where he was coming from. It's all about that kind of, the ripening and the things like that. And I'm sure there's other things. There's a buttery kind of edge to it as well, isn't there? There's something in there that's, you know, I just don't anything. Or
you know, Scopex also changes color, as, you know, often it comes light yellow and then it turns into like this. Do you reckon it also has to do with what we were just talking about?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe the time it's kind of, yeah,
ripening.
possibly. Or the components that it uses, maybe it's at a better time, at a different stage of its the process sort of thing, maybe.
So in theory it would get better.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Fermented more, maybe. Who knows? You know, I'd love to know. I'd love to speak to somebody like Simon Scott, you know, and see what his take on fermentation is and things like that. Yeah, there's fish scientists and things, you know, they're far more knowledgeable. But Rod was onto it 100% all day long. He was onto that. He tapped into that, and he knew, and he applied his knowledge, I think, from the particles to how we use fruits and things like that for these fruity flavours. Of course, things like monster crab, you know, there's nothing in that, but there's obviously other attractors in that, because you're not talking about fruit fermentation in that. But another thing that really was a bit of a game changer that come to light when I was testing for Rod. Out of the blue, he brought out this range of, he called them compounds. So you had one called Compound TF, which was tuna fish. That was a tuna fish bait. There was one called Reaction Compound. Now that one in particular, and he also did some extract as well. Okay, so I had one called Sugarcane Extract, which had a real sort of honey, sort of kind of undertone of honey, and very, well, it says, yeah, sugar cane, you know, it's extract sugarcane, you know, fermentation maybe again, you know, we're going down that line of you know, sugars and things again, I don't know, but I think there is definitely a link. But Reaction Compound, Compound TF, and I think there's a couple of pictures of a fish caught in there, a couple of fish in there on TF. That was a great one. Reaction Compound was another one that I wish I'd tried longer, because that was a good one as well. Reaction Compound, and I think that wasn't just an attractor. I think that was almost like there was almost like an amino acid profile to that. I think there was something else in that. It certainly was a good one there.
So not just the flavour.
I don't think it was just the flavour. It wasn't just an attractor. It was a very dark. I mean, I've never ever seen anyone try to sell it. You know, I've never seen online anyone selling it. It was very dark, very rich kind of. You couldn't even say it's fishy. It's not even. Well, I suppose really in hindsight, it's more of a kind of a yeasty kind of smell, maybe. Yeah, that kind of yeast, marmite kind of thing.
Oh, exactly the word that came to my mind,
Yeah.
because Rod liked, he loved to coat his bait
in marmite.
Yeah.
Yeast extract. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeast.
Still being used now.
What does yeast do? Ferments. You know, it's that kind of again. You know, it's all that jigsaw. So Reaction Compound was good. Compound TF was good. And so they were good, but that was kind of where I kind of sort of started to drift out of it, unfortunately. And one of the flavours that I did admit to say was that was another good one, was one called Hawaiian Compound. We're talking about the compounds, and I forgot about that one. That was fantastic. That really was also a good one. So much so that I took that back to Savay, and I caught a couple of fish on Savay on that. And I used that in mingle fruit as well. That was a great combination. So that was one of the other compounds that stood out as well. I think certainly above TF compound TF. That was a good one, but that Hawaiian and the Reaction was phenomenal. Really, both were very, very good. But the Hawaiian, that is I think that would come again from some of these fruit esters that we're talking about as well. Maybe, I don't know what kind of fruits Rod used. Very strong, pungent flavour again, that kind of probably more on the lighter end, like not the deep, rich fruits like the winter ones, like Autumn Harvest. Maybe the more citrusy kind of element. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. That kind of sharper kind of tone. But yeah, great attractor. Really very, very good. Very good.
So these days, I think people underestimate the power that flavors have. We just talked about base mixes and flavors. So using the same base mix with a different flavor will get you more bites than the other.
Yeah, I think certain base mixes do complement certain flavours. I think there is a bit of a harmony there sometimes. We are a little bit set upon a fish meal has to have a fishy flavour. I think that's kind of, we've kind of lost that a little bit really. You know, you often see a fish meal with your krills and your crabs and all the usual regular ones. But I think that adding a fruit flavour to a fish meal has kind of been lost a little bit. I'm sure there's absolutely loads of companies out there that do it. But I think a lot of people just associate a fish meal with a fish bait and a seed mix or something. And I think seed mixes are sort of something that aren't used to their full potential as well. They're kind of not in vogue at the moment. Everything's gone nut or fish meals, and yeah, there's only so many fish meals you can get. You know, all these companies, I'm sure they use LT94s and all these other different kinds of fish meal. Few extras chucked in here and there maybe, but krill powder's very popular at the moment. But they all put a krill flavour or a tuna flavour or something like that. To put a really good fruit attractor in that might just literally, you know, just be a game changer. You know, people just don't do it these days. I'm probably just as guilty now as well, you know. But I had it all at my disposal, so it was very easy for me, you know, at the time. But there's also, I think there's going back to what you said about general public, I think there is a lot of to capture the angler as well. You know, don't get me wrong, I was talking about how amazing these things smelled, but I could also use that in evidence of that by testing it, you know, and I was in that fortunate position. But I think, you know, we're all guilty of it. You smell it and you think, oh, it's amazing. But the fish might just shut off to it. It might be too strong. I think, you know, that flavour zone in the swim, it might be just repelling them instead of attracting them. You might catch on it maybe after an overnight session or something because the levels have dropped enough for them to be able to come in and think, yeah, that's more, you know, they can withstand that kind of level a bit more. But I think there's a lot of capture in the angler as well, you know, there is. And I think as well, it's not just that. I think in the time Rod was making these attractors, the food industry, or certainly the regulations around food industry, were probably not as strict as they are now. So some of these ingredients he probably had access to, and all these other bait people at the time, was probably a little bit easier. Now, with more, you know, obviously more synthetic and things like that, flavours and so on, and the red tape, let's say, around certain things you're allowed to use and import, kind of restricts some of these companies, so you haven't got that kind of that freedom like Rod and some of the other people back then might have had, you know. So yeah, different times. But there's still some classics out there now, you know. There's you know, some of these baits out there today are amazing, you know. Some of these that stand the test of time. I mean, I don't mind mentioning like things like the Cell. I mean, that catches fish wherever it goes, but yeah, it's things like that. But there's some great flavours out there. But for its time, I think some of Rod's stuff was just brilliant. You know, I'm a little bit biased though.
I'm not sure if that's biased, but I think,
yeah, when it's at your disposal like it was, you know, you are a little bit biased. But you know, I think as well, there's a lot of it as well. Is, you know, I had access to a lot of these really great things that no one else had. So my confidence level was kind of up here, you know, and you'd walk onto a lake with so much confidence because you've just flipping turned over another lake somewhere else, and you'd walk in and you just like, you know, you knew it was going to work wherever, you know. It's just great feeling. That confidence is 90% of it anyway, before you even start, you know, so you knew you've got something that works. It's a great feeling, you know. Whereas I'm struggling like mad on here at the moment. So confidence is a bit low. I need a boost. Give me some autumn harvest.
that's not an issue. We've got some. No, but
start rolling.
Yeah, that's the one, huh?
Yeah, there it is. So that's it. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So yeah, that'll take me back a bit. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's so good. So good. And like gold dust as well, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty rare these days. Yeah.
So yeah, you're lucky enough to...
Compared to this one.
Yeah, so that's then.
Yeah, and that's now.
And this is now.
Yeah.
You know. It's not, you know, it's there, isn't it? It's identical. That's a really, really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Done a good job there. It's
So
right there.
this is like a test with the control.
Yeah, this is a control
This
test.
is a control test now.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing with the fizz as well.
Yeah. So let's have a look.
You can keep those
Yeah,
as
cool.
well.
Oh, okay. Let's have these then for now. Trouble is, I don't want to lose about 300 quid on the floor. Yeah. God, blimey. Oh, that's amazing, that. Yeah, takes me back. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at that.
All those associations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
All
does.
those
It takes you
memories.
back straight
Memories.
away. Straight away.
Yeah.
My kitchen used to just smell of it all the time. See that? That is so good. Now I've got that and that together. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. That's very, very good. Yeah, I'd have no qualms about using that.
If I wasn't happy with it, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't have released it. No, good luck with that. Because it needed doing. It needed the fingerprinting done of that and properly.
It's, I've seen many orange oils and lime
Yeah,
and
so-
lemon, which I'm sure this one, all of it has.
Yeah, and I think I might be talking out of turn, so apologies to the lads up north, but I'm almost certain that you know, I think the Reed Smear special was the autumn harvest. There's definitely the orange oil that went into that. That was definitely a key part, and I think that's what people have missed out. 100%.
I think the first time I got told was by Frank Warwick. He was
Yes, he'd know.
telling me about
All day long. Yeah.
harvest and fizz,
Yes.
combining them together.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's such a. I never did. Crazily, I never tried it. There they were, litres of the stuff, and I never tried it. But I never did because that wasn't my job. I was there to. When I say job, that was that was my remit. Yes. I was there to test each flavour on its own merit, not combine them. But had I, who knows? I mean, fair play to the lads up north.
It will falsify your test results.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And I never had the time because I knew in about 3 weeks there was another box arriving with more stuff to try. You know, and it begrudged me to really, you know, it was to because I was so confident in monster crab and shellfish and pro fish, well, superfish, sorry. I was so sold on that being the thing. It kind of was a big decision to leave that and then start using, you know, the other stuff to
Something
test.
else.
Exactly. But it was so good. Fizz was so good. It had to be. To beat that or to match that was, I knew it was good. So yeah.
The confidence
100%.
skyrocketed from the first.
It really was, yeah. I was just really walked around like a dog with two dicks. It was like, you know, nothing could go wrong. That's how I felt. It was just like everything at the time. It was just so, you know, yeah, good.
Confidence is key, Shaun.
I think that is it. That's 90%.
That's a big ingredient.
I think so. I think so. You know, I'm not a great angler by anything, but if you've got a decent bait and you know you can put it on the spot, you know, your after work's done. You know, it's yeah, it's good, and it's what I found as well. Certainly with things like the Scopex dry, it was how quick the target fish I was catching some of the big ones early, you know, quite quick. You know, and we're talking about in the 90s, so we're not talking 50 pounders here, you know, but like the fizz, you know, and things like that. I did like at the time. I'm trying to get my stats right now because it's a long time ago. Andy Little had the record for the most 30-pound 30 pounders caught in a season. Okay, and that stood from Save, long time. There's one particular year, and it was totally unbeknown to me, but Peter Broxat on Save and Stuart Gillam, who was fishing Harefield, were all trying to beat that record of the most 30s, and so was I. And I actually did it. Because I chatted to Stuart at one of the Carp shows. He said, "Oh, you're the bloke who," you know, because see, we got around. But you know, those people I respected, like Pete Broxup, who I became to know from fishing Save on days and so on, and sadly no longer with us, and Stuart Gillam from talking to Stuart. You know, massive kudos. You know, well done. You know, it was great because they knew. You know, it was hard work. I was fishing 3 nights a week, and it was tough angling. And I think I had 16 30s, which in 1992 was a lot of 30s at the time. And I was fishing a very, very, you know, very good water at the time. I was very fortunate as well to have a water that only I really had access to, and a few others, because it was part of where I worked. It was in the compounds of where I worked. So I did have that that advantage, I suppose. But then Pete fished from the Bailiff's Island on Savo, so he had a massive advantage as well, and some other people. But anyway, that's by the by. But I can't remember where I was going with that now. But anyway, yeah, so I caught, as I say, 16 30s, and I think I had 49 20s, a ridiculous amount of doubles, 50, 60 doubles. What a season in the 90s, you know, it's just incredible. All on those, the fizz and the, you know, amazing, the harvest and that through. Because I did used to make that transition, actually. I used to do like the fizz through the summer, and then I would often quite like to use the harvest in the winter, you know. In fact, I think sometimes, actually think about it now, it's just come back to me now, in the winter I would test using the harvest as a bit of a, because I knew how good it was, as a bit of a control as well. I remember doing that now, actually. Now it's just come back to me during the winter months. And I had like winter months on the harvest. I think I wrote about it. I'm sure I wrote about it in this one here. Winter Wonderland. Yeah, there you go. So I wrote an article called Winter Wonderland, and that was about autumn harvest at the time. And I had, in the middle of the winter, I had 3 30s in a session, in a day session, which was phenomenal. Yeah, there you go. Winter Wonderland. Yeah. So, as I say, it says here I've been using the fizz up to the autumn, and then Rod asked me to try, you know, autumn harvest. So this is earlier on. So the timings all, you know, I can't remember now, 30 odd years ago. So then the autumn harvest come along, and it says here, you know, different berries found in the autumn which Rod had blended himself. There we go. So this is all about, you know, that kind of it. So, and I used that in a yellow seed mix, Pro Mix 50-50 combination, which is what I said. So I remembered that a little bit. We're at a rate of 7.5 mil with 3 mil of fruit sensible. There you go. So that was like, and the fizz used to go with fruit sensible as well. They were, you know, that was just a, you know, it just gave it a bit of a rounded thing. So I did make sure I always did the same, you know. And yeah, 3 30s, biggest being 35. You know, amazing in winter. So
Even nowadays.
yeah,
Even nowadays, that would be
that was a
result,
day session, you know. And that wasn't just 3 30s. There was 2 20s, and you know, yeah, a couple of doubles. I expect it was mad times. You know, so yeah, good, very, really good times.
You mentioned that you were kind of sliding out of it by then?
Yeah, so work, my job changed, okay, so even though I had more time to go fishing, I was, you know, the hours were different, and it kind of, I was working a lot of night shifts, whereas what I used to do is whereas I had a day job, I would go down the lake in the evening, do a quick overnighter on Tuesdays and Thursdays, okay, they were my 2 nights. And then every other week I would do Tuesday, Thursday and Friday night. Okay, so I, you know, just to keep the girlfriend happy at the time, you know, I used to, you know, try and do that. And, you know, so I wasn't a full timer. But then obviously I started working shift work, and, you know, then I'd be working a lot of nights. So time with you know, eventually my wife and everything. So yeah, I kind of drifted out of carp fishing in a way. Strange, I know. I won't lie, I did also became a little bit, I fell to the fishing for numbers, shall I say. You know, the love of the hobby at the time became almost like a numbers game. I was catching all these fish, and of course I just had 16 30s, and I just thought, you know, it became like, instead of enjoying the fishing as much, it was like, it was becoming a little bit of a, not a chore, but I was fishing more like looking for the big ones all the time. Not in, you know, not disrespecting a double, I would never do that, but you know, it was almost like, oh, it's a double, it's not, you know, and I was not, yeah, maybe I become a bit greedy, really, in reality, in hindsight, but it wasn't what I wanted, so I thought I'm gonna have a break from this for a while. And about 1997, as I say, I chatted to Rod and I told him the situation, and we, you know, he just changed, so Rod Hutchinson had just given up his distribution to a third party, Relum at the time, and that was all going on, and other people had come on the scene, new testers and so on, likes of Steve Briggs, you know, super anglers like Steve Briggs, Rob Hughes, Simon Crowe, they'd all come on board and so on. So there was people, you know, carrying on the legacy for Rod. And I just drifted out of the hobby for quite a few years, and I didn't really get back into it until about 2010. So big time, you know, out of the hobby. Yeah, so and I still kept in touch with Rod, although not as much. But you know, we used to meet at the shows and we'd have a chat and things, and good luck to him and so on. But I think that by then, when I sort of like just see him at the shows, I think the business had sort of taken a back seat as well, and he'd moved on as well himself. So you know, maybe I saw what I think is maybe some of the best days, you know, through those early attractors that come around. Because I don't think there was many others after I left. Mystique, and I know that was a good one. Maybe Dieter, you'll know them all, mate. But they were a Secret Agent was one that I never got my hands on, but it was later on. Yes. But I don't think there was too many later on that, you know, those ones I was fortunate enough to have are still up there with the top, you know.
You know, you're talking about attractors of Flavours that really made an impact.
Yes,
that's what you're trying to say.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. You know, don't get me wrong. Those likes of Secret Agent, I'm sure there are others that were there. And they probably are excellent, but I can't really say what they are because I've never even smelt Secret Agent. I couldn't tell you on Mystique. And I mean, Mystique's an old flavour, but I think it made even Mulberry Florentine. Okay, now that's one that I know that everyone thinks is like up there with the tops. That was after my time, just wasn't around. Oh, I certainly didn't get it. But I think there's elements of that in the harvest. I really do. I'm sure it's kind of got that mulberry berry, you know, those berries. It's that kind of ilk, isn't it? It's that kind of platform, really. I think it's from that same stable, let's say. You know, it's that kind of, yeah.
I think the harvest is a bit more subtle.
I think so.
A bit softer.
Yes, and I think the mulberry's got more of a floral kind of undertones, isn't it?
It's a bit floral.
I think so.
Hence the name, I guess.
I guess so. I guess the clues in the name. Yeah, there you are. So yeah, it's a good one, but I didn't get my hands on that.
No.
You know, I couldn't tell you when it was around.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it was the good times. Yeah, good times. Yeah, it was really, really an education, really.
Are you aware of? Of course, this is because we all believe in secrets in carp fishing.
Mm.
Are you aware of unfinished business? And was Rod developing something that he never got around to?
No, I'm not. There was one thing he did eventually do, which I guess, thinking about it now, and it's only just come to me now after our conversation about spray dried things. Okay. He brought out the MC mix, which was after my time, and I know a good friend of mine at the time who also went on board with Rod, Steve Renyard, was on Withy Pool with me at the same when I was there. I left way before Steve, and he took the place apart. And I know the MC mix, he used that, which is Monster Crab Mix. So that's why I said I think maybe there's some elements of that flavour was used in a powder form, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Dieter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got.
You've got some, obviously the base mix obviously smells of monster crab.
Some,
yeah, so that's maybe where that comes from. So he was using that kind of thought process with that. I believe that was devastating, and that's one that was way after my time. But yeah, so maybe he was sort of like thinking about that, but I'm not aware of any under-the-counter secret things. The Bream attractor, I will say, was always one that I kept very quiet, and Rod and I nicknamed it Guinness.
Guinness, yes.
We called it, and you'd heard about this, Guinness.
Yeah, you told me the first time you asked me when to roll you some custom hook baits.
Yes. Can you do the Bream?
Can you do a Bream? I've got a Bream attractor, but I've never really, had the experience to use it.
Yeah.
And then eventually made some up for you.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. That must be about 5-6 years ago now, I think.
And there's some really good people out there making baits with maple, that kind of out there now that are really doing amazingly well with maple as an attractor.
How did you guys meet?
Just online, I suppose.
I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think we just clicked on Flavours and I think the first message was sent by you to possibly get in touch, roll some hook baits, I suppose.
I can't remember.
Exchange from Flavours, I don't know. I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
I can't remember either now.
And then
We've corresponded so much, it's kind of got lost in time.
kind of got lost. Yeah, yeah.
I remember you asking my opinion on various things and how it came about.
Yeah, I sent you a couple of things over.
You did, very
Yeah,
kindly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I cherish those, you know. But yeah, the Guinness was a good one. Yeah, the Guinness. That was a funny one. I said, he said, don't be put off by the name. He said, if the name puts you off, let's just call it Guinness. And we did. We called it Guinness. So I'll take you another one on the Guinness rod, you know. Brilliant. I remember fishing a local water, Hatchett's Pond, little water in the New Forest. And this one particular day I was there, and I was with a really good friend who I used to work with, and he's no longer with us, Pete. He was a lot older than me at the time, but he befriended me and we bounced off each other. We had a good laugh, Pete and I. But Pete was a salmon fisherman, and I managed to convert him into a bit of carp fishing. So he bought all the gear, and we were fishing Hatchett's Pond this particular time. And I used to roll the bait for Pete, so I made up some Scopex dry with Bream attractor as you do. And I'm not joking, lads. It was like this, all of us, all day, both of us, just like this. Okay, there's a lot of tension there as well, but it was a common. I caught the big one in there, and the second biggest in that session. And I remember there were some lads a bit further down the bank, and they all, what are you doing? What are you? Because it literally was, if you know, a tench carp, Pete's in, I'm in. It was chaos all day, and they go, what are you, you know, you're taking the mick here, aren't you? What's going on? What are you using? And one of them knew me, and he said, you know, I know you use it. What flavour's that? And I just went, Guinness. I knew he.
Good luck.
I knew he'd never ever. Oh, he probably went away and said, "Where do I get the Guinness from?" Yeah, you know, and that was it. Because if I said Bream attractor, he said, "You'll take it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I just said Guinness. You know, and I remember that was great because through
The code word.
The code word. Yeah, and only Rod and I knew that. Because he said, you know, because I was put off by the name, he said, "I'll just call it Guinness."
That's good.
Because it was dark, wasn't it? Dark brown.
Yeah, it's very dark.
Dark brown.
Yeah.
Maple kind of colour.
Yeah.
And it was, it's great because the
It
Guinness.
stains, you know.
Yeah.
Stains everything.
It does, mate.
Yeah.
It does. What's that about? You know, it's mad. So, good attractor. It's all still out there. I'm sure some people have got it tucked away nicely. If they have, use it because it's good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
I've got a few bottles.
Have you?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, of course he does.
Just in talking to you, I've always noticed that you want to deeply respect the work that's been done decades ago.
Yeah.
So, in all honesty, do you believe after having a controlled test that Dieter succeeded?
I think he has, absolutely. I mean, I have not smelt these together like that, side by side. So this is basically a full bottle, because people say, oh, you know, it won't be the same. Well, that's hard. I don't think that's probably ever been opened. That's full.
It's not being used.
Exactly. It's never been used.
It's
all
the
right?
best. I've also
the
taken
bottle
the
is
best
solid.
one that
The
I've got.
bottle is sound.
Yeah, yeah.
It's still got, and I was very careful with that inner, you know, the seal at the top. Okay, not to disturb that. So that is pretty. They are spot on.
Yeah.
That is spot on. And this isn't a sales pitch, I promise you, because that's not my bag.
No.
That is very, very good. And I know the work you went to get that.
Yeah.
You know, to identify that. Well, that's just your story for another
Yes.
day. But
Let's not get too deep into
the
that.
science.
No.
But excellent. It's back. It's basically it's back. You know?
Yeah.
It's back. If you roll your bait, or
Together. Yeah.
there you are. Look, there you are.
The good thing is, the work has been done before us.
Yes. Yes.
So we only have to
Yeah. Yeah.
carbon copy it,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yes.
Not saying that that's easy.
No.
But
if you can freeze dry that into some base mix, that would be the cherry on the top.
yeah,
If you can, you know, get some freeze dried powder and, you know,
of course that's possible.
it's possible, isn't it? Now you've
course
got the
it is.
liquid, it's got to be possible. Of
course
I don't
it
know,
is.
yeah, I guess it's. I don't know how they do it. Evaporate. I don't know what they do. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So no.
No, yeah, I wish. I wish. But I was telling Dieter the other day, that was one of my biggest regrets, not playing with those Scopex dries and Superfruit. I didn't write much about Superfruit. I used Superfruit and it worked very, very well. But it was just kind of lost in all the other stuff going on, and Mingle Fruit came out. And as I was saying, Rod told me that Mingle Fruit was something from a long time ago, And unfortunately we can't now, but if you were to smell autumn harvest and then stick your head in a bag of mingle fruit, it's there.
Yeah.
Straight away, you know it. In fact, what I used to do as well, rightly or wrongly, if you dabbed your finger in mingle fruit, it almost had that, almost like not sherbety, but very, very sweet, very rich taste. You know, it was very nice. It was not
Right.
you know, it's lovely taste.
So you bet there were definitely sweetener in there.
Well, I would imagine that's probably the best thing, that if they're spray dried fruit, I imagine they're sweet in their own right anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to have a sweetness to them anyway. Yeah. So I think that's kind of where they would go.
Where it comes from.
Yeah. I must as well mention as well, not only was at the time, it came a little bit later than Nu-Val Fizz, but then Rod released the fizz powders as well.
Yes.
The appetite stimulators. Now, I was a big advocate of appetite stimulators, so I would always use a sense pill, and I would always try and use an appetite stimulator. Never use a savoury, because I say savoury isn't my thing. So if you like savoury baits, I'm not your man.
No savoury, no spice.
No. See, just going off on a bit of a tangent, I was never, and I know it's an amazing fish catcher, but Mega Spice and Ultra Spice, I just personally couldn't get it to work. I know it's a great winter flavour, and I know friends who rave about it.
Yep.
I much preferred that kind of bait for the winter.
Not funny, but it's facts really. So when we tried to recreate this range and these flavors, we did the Mega Spice as well, Ultra Spice too.
Yes.
Evaporate milk and ice cream. That sort of these sort of classics that we didn't already have our hands on.
Old school classics, yeah.
What were the flavors that we really wanted to include into this range? So there wasn't a harvest. I've got thousands of flavors, but there's only one flavor that smells like the harvest does. You could debate the fizz is, you know, orange, lime, lemon, but it's still not. The fizz is a combination of those. So to get to the point, Mega Spice, the flavor house basically came back to us saying there's no carrier in this flavor. So it is, first of all, it's the most expensive flavor that we have, but it's also the purest flavor that we've got, because there's no sort of PG oil, there's nothing. There's nothing in there.
Okay.
That's a very, very extremely pure flavor. So whilst you might need 5, 6, 7, 8 mil per kilo or per egg if you're making hook baits of other flavors, the Mega Spice 2, maybe, if even 2 mil. Yeah. That's more than enough.
So I think, I'm not sure, but I think one of the main components of, it might be Ultra Spice, it might be Mega, was clove. I'm not too sure.
There is clove in, and the biggest thing in those, the biggest ingredient in those spice flavors is definitely cinnamon. Yeah. Cinnamaldehyde, actually.
And I think I'm right in saying, but I never used it, that wasn't White Lightning, wasn't that?
I've never seen that.
Nor have I.
No, I've never
wasn't
seen
that a similar?
I've heard it was
similar to.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they use that kind of.
Maybe the same sort of technique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know.
That was a base mix. That was never.
But yeah, I went off on a tangent. But the appetite stimulators were always great. You know, the fish one, you used to open it and it smelt like so fishy, and like you just knew
proper
it was gonna,
fishy.
You knew it was going to complement the bait and so on, and just give it that little edge. As were the Sensipils. But the fizz one, when I got that, it was one of those, you opened it and it was like, and it kind of sherbety again. It was literally just like a powder form of that. So it had to complement the bait, you know, had to. Yeah. I'm not an expert on appetite stimulators and things like that, you know, but I was told to use, you know, Rod advised me to do it, give a rounder bait profile. So it was a good one. So
all these little ingredients that you put into a mix basically gave you more and more and more edges.
I think so.
Up till the point where it became the norm that, you know, fruit bait, I'd use the fruit. Sometimes I combined a bit of dairy as well. I would you know, depending on what kind of one it was. I always used fruit with Nu-Val Fizz, but
you know, that dairy one was very good. That was a very good sense appeal. But the fizz was just something completely different. You know, it was like, wow, this is different. You know, it's like
The powder.
great. The powder, it was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, crazy different. You know, just like nothing else. There was nothing else like it at the time. Yeah. So
So when you took back your fishing gear out of the closet, basically,
yeah, basically, well, bought it all
after
again,
what,
yeah.
10, 15 years,
Yeah.
has there been anything like the stuff that you used to use? Anything devastating?
So when I got back into it, obviously I didn't go out of my way to. Word got round that I was, you know, fishing again. Anyway, but one person I always respected in the bait industry was Mike Wilmot. I really did. But even back when I was with Rod, I knew about Mike, you know, catching a lot of good fish in various waters and stuff. So I approached Mike and had a chat with him, and he had a bait called the B5, yeah, shellfish B5. So straight away, shellfish, you know, straight away it triggered a thing. And also he had one called he used a plum kind of attractor, and I knew that its track record was because Mike didn't have many baits in his range, but that's not a bad thing, because if something isn't broke, don't fix it. If
Yes.
you're that confident in something, I think, you know, you stick by it.
Correct.
And I knew the B5 was always very good, so that's one that I think and Mike took me on board as well, and you know, I fished with Mike for quite a few years and caught my PB, UK PB on it. So it's a great bait, really good, and I think that shellfish base mix he uses is up there. You know, it's one of those. So yeah, but there was nothing really like reminded me of anything that Rod did. Really, nothing really. No, nothing. There's one, but I can't. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. But there's a flavour out there there's a bait out there that's very, very similar.
There's so much static on the image now.
Yes.
All of a sudden.
Yes, we need answers now.
No, yeah, I really can't.
No, you can't push it. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But can you give us an idea?
Yeah, there's a bait out there that I think that uses, like, I think there's probably, well, there are a lot of baits out there that people use Rod's flavours in. There's a very well-known bait out there that uses Nu-Val Fizz.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, and when I first smelt it, I went, yeah, I know what's in that. I know what's in it. There's other things, and it's a fantastic bait. But yeah, it's not for me to say.
If you don't
In case
tell bait, we destroy Bivy.
We destroy the movie.
Sleep
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, you know, those of us who've been close to Nu-Val Fizz would spot that straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
They would. But it's not for me. It's not my place to say it. You know.
And during all that time, you kept in contact with Rod.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So yeah, not as much as I should have. You know, in absent. You know, it's one of those things. You know, you always mean to keep in touch with people, and I must give them a call next week, and before you know it, a few months have gone by, and you know, families growing up and things, and changes in your life and jobs and so on. So, so it was a regret, and you know, and I think I got probably back in contact with Rod more on a more regular basis, sadly, towards the end of his life. I was very, you know, I knew Mark Lawson, who was very good friends with Rod, okay, and a bit of field tester about the same time as me, and prior to and before me as well. He goes back a long way, Mark, with him, and Mark's a lovely fella, and Mark was very, very close to Rod, as is Mally and some of, you know, other friends, Kerry and Roger Smith and so on. But yes, so via Mark, I kind of got back in contact with Rod again, and we all met one day. We had a bit of a field tester sort of get together over a Christmas, you know, drink, and yeah, it was nice. We had people like John Vanette came over, and I remember John wrote in some of these carp scenes with me.
Yep.
Some of the lads from Yateley were there. Mark was there, and so on. It was a brilliant evening, you know, getting to see Rod again and stuff, and yeah, so we corresponded a couple of times, a couple of Christmas cards, as you do, and things, and the old, you know, And then sadly, unfortunately, the sad news, I was called by Mark actually. Mark Wilson said to me, have you heard about Rod? And yeah, it was sad. So yeah, we lost him. But yeah, he was you know, in those early days, I've got a lot to thank Rod for. You know, I'm no bait expert at all. I was just very fortunate to be able to try some really amazing attractors and base mixes and be part of that fishing development, you know, Rod Hutchinson, and I feel very privileged as well. And as I say, I was young then, I was in my 20s then, through to probably like late 20s, but with my older head on now, and I think about, you know, obviously a bit more educated, I like read about bait and things like that. The jigsaw, as I said about it earlier, I use that as an analogy, the jigsaw's kind of come together a bit now, and I think, do you know what, you know, about it's all about the fermentation and things like that, and you think, yeah, it makes sense now, you know, it's kind of making sense. Yeah, so good on him. Yeah, good on him, because there's some, you know, I've taken a lot away from that.
It pushed forward the carp scene miles.
I'm absolutely privileged to be
years ahead.
Yeah,
I'm privileged to be, and I told Dieter the other day, and privileged to have written in these. You know, these are collectible on eBay and things. You know, people pay good money for these. But at the very front of one of them, and I remember I was stood in my kitchen in my first house when I got this through the post, and there's a small at the very front of it. There's a few words there, and I've actually screenshot those. You know, I've taken a picture of that and
What are the words?
kept that. Well, it's just a special mention to me. You know,
Okay.
he's written this. You know, he's put this together, and there's some fantastic anglers in there. There's far better anglers than me in there. But he actually says, you know, a special mention must be made about one of the field testers in this magazine. Throughout this edition, you'll come across articles, pictures, etc. from myself. And by the time you read this, because he knew I was after that record for the 30s, by the time you read this, Shaun would have broken quite a few records. You know, he knew I was gunning for that.
Yeah.
And it's basically his testimony to his products, really. I wouldn't have done it without that.
Yeah.
And his guidance. That's at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh yeah, I've been feeding him all day.
Yeah.
Little Robin. Yeah, I put some crumb down there for him earlier on. He's all good. That's my lucky charm. He hasn't brought me much luck yet, but he's working on it.
There's somebody saying hi.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's all right.
So
yeah.
okay.
A really, really lovely man, and yeah, I just feel very, very honoured and privileged to have been part of that.
As do we, actually.
100%.
Hats off. A lot of respect.
Yeah.
And I
Take my
do
hat to him.
believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but this is for you. I also
Thank you. Yeah.
take my hat off for you. I want to express a lot of respect because after all those years and all your own modesty, you say, the title, the Carp King.
Oh, no, don't go there.
In some kind of way, I think you deserve that. And not maybe in the way the most people would do that, but nonetheless, that's a kind of respect. And I do want to thank you a million times over for this opportunity, especially here. Because that's something I'm gonna remember till my last day. Also thank you a lot, Dieter, for that. So Dieter, maybe the last words of this podcast are for you.
For me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this sums up.
Yeah, well, this sums up, it brings back a lot of soul
Yes.
to carp fishing. That's what we've been missing.
I think so. Just in general, the soul and the friendships behind carp fishing in general, and not in carp fishing alone, but in just in life. But it's the last couple of years have been taken over by social media, I think, and they have been more about numbers and likes rather than they should be about fishing, friendship, coming together, like we're doing now at Redmire Pool.
There's no better place. It's the source of carp fishing.
Yeah, I never expected to be. But I'm just very happy that Shaun invited us. I'm very happy I can take you to this place. and just in general. I mean, I don't think I have many words left to say and to show my gratitude towards Shaun and towards the stories that have just been told. But yeah, here he is again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Robin's again. So no, I think I'd like to finish on a positive note, saying we've got a couple of fish.
Mm-hmm. We do.
And we probably are going to catch a few more.
Let's hope so.
Shaun is back on track, back on the fizz, doing the biz, hopefully. So yeah.
Yeah, well,
I wish everyone the best. I wish everyone looking the best as well. But everybody watching too, watching, listening to this podcast. Hopefully, there's many more to come.
Yep, I'd like to.
And we'll see what happens in the future anyway.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Cheers, guys.
See you next time.
And by that, I'll cut it off for the last time.
Well done, guys.
Will you edit the Russian parts?
Of course not.